This is the moment of practical knowledge. This is the moment that you bakers want to hear a baker speaking to you now. This is not a technical language anymore which was shared this morning. We have the baking specialist from Winnipeg who is highly qualified in what she does in baking. Put your hands together for Yvonne.
Bakers don't often think about wheat quality. We think about flour, right? We think about how our flour is going to perform in the bakery. Okay, but NAMILCO has to think about wheat quality. And so we're very appreciative of their business, and they are buying for Guyana top quality Canadian wheat. But I think it's important for us as bakers to understand that all the steps prior to that flour arriving at our bakery, all the work that's gone on. You heard from Mr. Taylor, the breeding, all the varieties, from Lisa Nemeth, all the work involved. So as a baker, there was a time when I thought flour was flour. You know, when I was just going to school, I really didn't have an appreciation for all the work and all the understanding of flour. So I think that's what we want to just plant a seed in your minds to let you know all the trouble the mill is going to bring high quality wheat to Guyana. So flour quality, okay, that's the starting point for us as bakers, and we're going to move on right to that. You know, I've been very fortunate in my career, and I honestly, sincerely feel that way. I have traveled to so many countries and have had the opportunity to work with many bakers like yourself. And I am honestly blessed, I feel that way, to be here with you in Guyana, working with you and learning from you. But what I find so interesting throughout all my travels, and even in our own country, is when the flour doesn't work, what do we as bakers say? What do we say? It's the mill's fault. Right? What's wrong with the flour? That's what we tend to say. And I'm not saying you say that, but from my experience, I hear a lot of bakers say that. Okay, and it's a natural conclusion. But as bakers, right, and that's what we all are from all kinds of bakeries, right? We have to take ownership of that flour. Once we receive that flour, I can assure you it's very high quality wheat coming into the market. Okay, so the pressure now, or the onus, is on us to make that flour work, regardless of whatever challenges Guyana will face. So how well, as bakers, do we understand flour? Right, 70% of the flour is starch. 12% is protein, right? Afiz mentioned protein. You know, we all hear about protein. And yes, it's very, very important, of course, in baking. And we'll explain why. Then we always have moisture content on flour, right? There's some moisture in flour. And then you see 3% pentosans. This really just refers to bran particles, okay, in your flour. The mill can't completely remove all the bran, even with such a high-tech milling process. And then we have 1 to 2% of fats in flour. Okay, so all of these components, for us as bakers, have an integral part in baking, right? The starch plays a role. The fat plays a role. The protein plays a role, okay? So all of these things we will come to understand, hopefully, a little bit better as we move along. So wheat is a unique cereal grain from a baking standpoint, right? I mean, there's so many grains, and many of your bakeries are working with them. I have seen in Guyana other seeds, flax, and I've seen different multi-grain breads. So many other grains are available to you as bakers. So wheat is unique, and bakers have to understand that. It is the only cereal that has the most gluten or protein forming properties right? Or gluten-forming properties. And as bakers, that's what we want to understand. So these gluten properties, you know, bakers, the dough is, you can stretch it, right? And sometimes it fights back, right? We have many stages in baking. And that's what gluten is. If you make a dough with flour and water, and you wash that, you take a little piece, just for your own interest, and you wash that under cold water, okay? The starch will go away, everything. What will remain in your hand is the gluten. And it's like an elastic band, really. It's so, so rubbery, only from high quality wheat. Right. If you have very low quality or inferior quality, the gluten will be maybe like the dough more. So just for your information, that's what we talk about when we speak about Wurzifees, protein, gluten, okay? That's the rubbery substance that's in flour, and it's essential for bread baking. Okay, that brings the elasticity to the dough, allows you as bakers to stretch it, manipulate it, shape it many ways. Sometimes you don't have time, you have to do something else, right? It's the gluten that allows you to have a little bit of forgiveness if it's a high quality wheat. And what are our quality expectations? What do we want as bakers? Right? Do we mix the dough every day the same way because that's what we do? Or do we understand that if it's warmer, maybe we have to make changes that could affect the quality? Right? As bakers, we want to take the flour and make the best product that we can make. And what better way to do that than understand the raw material and how we can maximize that? Because we can. So depending on your types of bakeries, whether you're a large industrialized plant, right, or whether you're an in-store bakery or a small bakery, all of you are all equally important because you all have your own market share and you're all unique products that you're making, right? And all of these bakeries do things differently. In Guyana, in Canada, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, everywhere. And that's why sometimes it's difficult for us as bakers, right? Because what works in one bakery may not work in the other bakery. The flour is the same, but everything else could be different. So bakery managers, bakery help, have to understand that they have to adapt. Bakers by nature, I think, are a bit stubborn. And it's not a bad thing, because that's the reason you get up in the morning, at 2 in the morning, and that's the reason you work till the job's done. So it has its advantages. But at times, I've learned that I have to be flexible to make a better product. And maybe it's a little different than the way I thought it was. And your formula as bakers impact flour quality, right? You can make bread out of 4 ingredients: flour, water, sugar, salt. Yeast, forget that. Flour, water, salt, and yeast. You can make bread out of those 4 ingredients. You don't need any other ingredients to make bread. But we all put more ingredients. We put sugar, we put fat, we put different levels of these things, right? Some use improvers, some don't, right? So all these things impact how that flour is going to work for you in the bakery. And there's different processes, right? In Canada, we can make bread from start to finish in 2.5 hours. In Guyana, your fermentation time is longer than that. So you see how different it is in many countries. So depending on the baking process, right, greatly affects the end quality of the product. And then we have to adjust. We have to adjust many things depending on what processes you are adopting as bakers. And how do we do that? We have to have a good understanding of what the function is of those ingredients so that they work for you, right? Your dough shouldn't be running you. You run your dough. You control your dough. And to do that, the only way that I know, and maybe others know other ways, but the only way I know is to have a good understanding of what those ingredients you're adding as bakers are doing for you. If you put less, if you put more, what's going to happen? So these are all the things we're going to talk about in the demonstration when we're in the bakery this afternoon. And of course, you know, as do I, that equipment, of course, impacts flour quality, right? How efficient our equipment is. What are we trying to do? You see this really squiggly picture? This is, to put this simplistically, basically, this is what you're doing as bakers when you're mixing, right? You are bringing oxygen into the dough, okay, through mixing. You're bringing energy from your mixer. Whether it's a dough break or a spiral, that's what you're doing. It's that oxygen from additives on the flour, from the atmospheric oxygen, and from the energy from the mixer that is developing your flour. So it's like a whole bunch of fish hooks. You know protein, when you put the water? It's like, who loves fishing? Nobody loves fishing in Guyana? I saw people fishing on the boardwalk the other night. No? Well, it's all like that. Protein is like that. Picture a whole bunch of fish hooks all loose in that spiral mixer or in your mixer that you're using. And mixing, the action of mixing, the bringing of oxygen to that dough makes all those fish hooks hook together. And that's what we need to do. If we don't do this properly, gas escapes, we have low volume, coarse crumb, we have all kinds of problems. So that's what the idea behind mixing is about. And many factors influence mixing: time,